So welcome everybody. Welcome to the Daily Intimacy. It's Tuesday morning. It's really nice to be here. I know I say this every week, but it's just such a blessing to have this kind of grounding piece every week, grounding community gathering and an expanding community. It's really nice to have new people, and I have a feeling we're going to have a bunch of new people in the next couple weeks. So expansion is what I feel like our work is about right now, especially during this interesting time of the pandemic, of going inward and being invited strongly to go inside. And what happens when we do that is we have the potential for expansion. So when we're distracted and busy and doing a million things, it's really hard to really tend to ourselves and our spiritual growth and our ability to be conscious and awake. And so I feel like this is one tiny piece of contribution to awakening during this time, which I really feel like is what the call is, between the racial injustices that are coming to the really strongly to the forefront. I mean, not that they haven't already, and the pandemic. So yeah, so here we are. So I invite everybody to take a nice deep breath. Give yourself a couple of breaths all the way down into the belly. I can't hear your sound and size, but I really invite you to make some sound. Yeah, good. And then I invite you to close your eyes and give yourself a couple of moments to tune in to yourself. Right off the bat, why don't you check in with your physical body? How are you feeling this morning in your physical body? If you slow down and breathe and pay attention, there's probably a place in your body where you tend to kind of put the stress. I just noticed in the last couple of months that I have like a little tiny shovel, and I sort of shovel the stress into my jaw, which is not the place that I would have thought of. But once I really opened it up and it was really relaxed, I had this like, wow, I don't usually feel that. And we all, we just get into patterns. So just checking in with your body, and whatever the space is that you are noticing, maybe it's your lower back or your neck or your shoulders, just some morning movements to embrace and nurture and love that space that so graciously and gracefully holds your attention for you. We can have gratitude for that part of ourselves. So for those of you that it's the jaw, you might just do a little bit of very gentle touch, pressure, even some circles, and the neck, the lower back. Yeah. And even for those of you that it's not your jaw this morning, or maybe ever, just inviting now a little bit of self-massage, a little squeeze of the shoulders with your hands. Maybe some rotation in the neck while you do that. Some of us haven't been with many people or any people during this time of the pandemic, and self-touch and self-nurturing has just become vital to survival, to surviving and thriving. And maybe just some squeeze down your arms with a little stretch from wrist to shoulder. Yeah. And while you're continuing to pay attention to yourself, I invite you to bring your arms up overhead with a nice deep breath. Reaching up towards the sky through your fingertips. And if you're sitting, press the sits bones down towards the earth as you reach up. And then we're going to lean over to the left. And you might grab hold of your hand or your wrist. And then inhale, coming back up and leaning over to the right. And then inhaling, reaching up. And exhale, let your arms float down. And one more little piece still, continuing to stay connected with yourself. I invite you to just twist to the right, gaze out over your right shoulder, and move your eyes in that same direction. And notice when you move your eyes all the way to the right, there's a little, even deeper twist. And then inhale, and as you exhale, turn back to center. Take a moment to notice the difference between the right and the left before we move to the left. And then inhale, twisting over to the left side. Looking out over your shoulder and also, again, your eyes all the way to the left. And then inhale and exhale, coming back. Great. Those of you that have already done yoga before, you might not have needed that. Okay, welcome everybody. Really nice to see all of you. If you've just recently hopped on, we'd love to see you. So your video and what is, turning your video on would be more than welcome. However you are in the space, whether you're walking or still in bed, totally fine. Also, please take a moment to check in to say hi, how you're doing, scale of 1 to 10 in the chat, and also where you're zooming in from. We've got people up the Eastern Seaboard, as they say when you hop on a flight, and other places around the country, I think. So it was always fun to hear where you're zooming in from. So today we have the beautiful Hilary Lake, who is, oh my gosh, we met before we met, but we actually met at a workshop back in 2014, and a really powerful week-long workshop, which the ISTA community put on. And even as recent as yesterday, I had an aha moment from that workshop. So that was really interesting.
Wow.
Maybe it was because we were going to be together today. And the energy of that time period is in the energy field right now. But I just know Hilary to be such a bright light. One of the things I love about you is that you're this is going to sound funny, but you're so smart. You're like, brilliant. And and just this flowing feminine energy of wisdom and guidance. And I've watched you come, really forward in your work with moving in grace and the different things you've been doing over the last 6 years. And now what you bring to us is such important work around social justice and the embodiment piece. I mean, I think that's, the consistent thing about you is that it's about embodiment as far as I can tell. And it brings such
Robyn?
I think her video's frozen.
Yeah.
I think you're okay, because I think she made you the co-host before she.
Okay. Well, I'm.
Okay. Oh,
now you're back.
Am I back? I was.
Yeah.
I disappeared for a second. I just turned everything off, so I just want to. Let me just double check my phone while we're here. So, yep. Okay, should be good. So thank you for being here. And I just wanted to remind everybody that this is participatory, and especially for those of you here for the first time, that your shares are welcome, your questions are really welcome, that this is a rich conversation, and it's richer when you add your voice to it. So we'll pause at moments, ask for your feedback, ask you to share what's coming up for you, and yeah. So please consider yourself participating in that way. I'll turn it over to you, Hilary.
Well, I'm really touched by that introduction, Robyn. Thank you. And yeah, I was reflecting about my own journey and how we connected, and over these six years, so much has happened, and how I came to this work that when we met was a real turning point for me in a big way. And so I'm grateful to have our connection and relationship through this time, and to be invited to speak here feels like, oh wow, like a reintegration for me in a big way. So thank you. And to see faces of people I've met throughout the years as well here, it's really awesome. And yeah, that nothing is lost, things just transform. So that is part of my story for sure. And I of course can't get into my whole story of how this came about. And yet there are some important pieces that I realized sharing that gives you a sense of like, how did she come to this work and where is she coming from? And that's a really big piece when we consider social justice work for me, and especially racial justice work, is who am I and where am I coming from and what is my truth? And the more in my experience that I can own that, the more I can come fully into relationship with other people, whoever they are, whatever their background or experiences, because I can own my truth and really be fully present. So I'll say that my journey in this lifetime started in Metro Detroit, which is a extremely segregated Metro Detroit area, or metro area. And I lived in the suburbs, an upper middle class neighborhood with two parents who were white. My father's British, he immigrated, and my mother's Polish and grew up in downtown Detroit. And all of her grandparents came from Poland. My father's family lived on the same farm for 500 years. So really deep roots in Southwest England. And the other side of the family were most all farmers, and some pastors in there too. So that's part of where my inspiration to become a minister came from, partly as well. And so I ended up living part of my childhood from age about 1 to almost 3 in Taiwan. And my dad worked for Ford Motor Company, so we traveled quite a bit. Also, we would go to England every year to visit family there. And in living in Taiwan, I had a nanny who was an indigenous woman named Atsu, and she took care of me and she taught me her language, and she held me on her back. And I actually didn't want to speak English when I was a baby, I guess is what my parents said. I was speaking this indigenous language, and they couldn't understand me, which is interesting. And then we left, and I lost all contact with her. And so I think that was really informative for me as a person, and led me to feel like what happened? What happened to this woman? What happened to this life that I had there? And there's of course, we have our own traumas, and we all carry traumas from our childhood generally, and our young lives. And so those all get mixed together, especially if it happens before we have verbal capacity of understanding. And so I was always feeling like, where's that connection? And also like, where do I belong? Because I definitely didn't feel like I belonged in the suburbs of Detroit with my other friends who were mostly all white. And I couldn't really put the pieces together. I would say until I started studying more about Buddhism in my teens. So I was really blessed, and I had an opportunity to go to a Unitarian Universalist church, which is a pretty liberal church. A lot of people in the Northeast know about U churches, and learn about all different religions and faiths. And I was very interested in that as a young age. And then to also travel, got to travel to Asia when I was a teen and to experience a lot, and felt really at home in Asia. I was like, that's interesting. And so it didn't fully click until I realized, oh, I had lived there when I was little. And that must have formed how I felt comfortable in the world in some way. So I also went to a all-girls Catholic high school that was pretty diverse school. A lot of girls came from downtown who got scholarships, and it was also partly Chaldean. Metro Detroit's pretty diverse, yet very segregated, right? So I also went to a church when I was younger, which I forgot to mention, in downtown Detroit, that was half Black and half white. And that started to click for me about like, wow, like my friends at Sunday school who are Black, I didn't think of it like that, but there's these friends of mine who are singing and dancing and having a great time. And I wanted to like join in and play with them, although I didn't feel like I could, and I didn't know why that was. And so it started to click for me around my racial awakening when I went to high school and saw, oh, okay, so these girls are coming from downtown Detroit and they're getting money to go to school here because, and not all of them, right? I don't want to generalize, but some of them. And finding out about that, and then thinking about my childhood and realizing, oh, right, so it was the white folks. We went to church at this Methodist church, living in the suburbs. And we drove all the way down there. And the other kids who were Black, they came from the neighborhood. And so there was a clear split. And I was always trying to like understand more of what was going on. And yet I didn't feel comfortable to have those conversations when I was young. And I'm going to invite us to reflect on that during the practice time, so you can sit with those questions for yourself, as well as around when did you wake up around race. And so I continued to study religion, and that was my focus, as well as theater and music and the arts, and always wanted to put these things together, even as a young person, and studied Buddhism mostly, and lived in Thailand for a year and studied sustainable development, lived with Indigenous folks. And then I woke up about like, oh yeah, I had that nanny. Oh, I wonder how that formed my brain when I was little. And then I went to divinity school at Harvard Divinity School, and was really blessed to get a full ride to go there. Otherwise I wouldn't. I was living in an anarchist co-op beforehand and was really resistant to going to an Ivy League school. And yet found when I was there amazing people who were doing a lot of social justice work, and a group who wanted to create a Unitarian Universalist cooperative house and live our values of sustainability and of social justice and of spiritual practice. And we did all this research about housing injustice and about just how racial injustice plays into the capacity for Black people mostly, and people who aren't white, to gain equity and to buy homes, and realized we wanted to help make other options. And mostly we were all white folks. And so in the end, we ended up buying a house in Roxbury. And guess what? We displaced a couple Black folks who were living there who were paying super low rent, and we recreated colonialism, even when we were doing all this research. So that was a huge wake-up call for me, and I think for the rest of us. And I just felt like, what am I doing? Like, what is this about? And I took this step back, and I realized how overwhelmed I was emotionally. And so another part of my life was doing a lot of dance and meditation and yoga. And I realized, I think I have a lot of work to do before I step out and create a new ministry program and try and change the world. So I went into the woods and lived at Earth Dance, and some of you know that place. It's a dance and artist residency retreat center, and lived there, worked there, and learned a lot about shamanism at the time, and just went really deep into my relationship with the land and my body and spirit, and had created Moving in Grace, which is a mindful embodiment practice, in divinity school as my thesis, and really wanted to figure out how to put the social justice work, and a big part of that was the racial justice work and environmental justice, together with the embodiment. So I've been sitting with that question for a decade now, and slowly there's been clarity that's come. It was not a quick thing at all. And part of that for me was realizing, oh, I need to go deeper into the history of Buddhism and understand that, like go to the home of Buddhism so that I can relate to that tradition more deeply in my embodiment and in my, to a sense of roots. So I lived in India and Nepal, and I studied Tantra there and went deeply into Tibetan Buddhism. And then came back and bought into Nine Mountain Retreat Center, which many of you know, and did work with Robyn there and some of you. And that was a place where I got to be in this collaboration and community and start to work out some of this integration, and then realized, oh, you know what, I'm kind of stuck in the woods a little bit here. And it was really hard to bring the social justice work out from living so far from a larger population or larger diverse community. So I ended up leaving, also knew I needed to live alone in order to go deeper, like what you were saying, Robyn, to do my inner work so that I could expand more. And the focus for me was really about how do I do this racial justice work well. So I ended up finding a native elder locally and did a training with them called Walking in Balance, which is a practice of reconciliation through counsel. And some of you may know Strong Oak or Walking in Balance through Visioning Bear, which I really recommend if you have any access to doing those circles. Also, I was blessed to meet who became a collaborator of mine, Anne Modesti, and we co-created Grace Between Races, which is an online forum for race reconciliation and having conversations about race issues. And that unfolded very synchronistically in that we both wanted to have these conversations and create space for other people to do that. And really from a place of like, how do we do it? We don't know. Let's explore, let's experiment. We're not experts. And had our friends of color come on, mostly friends of color or people who might be presenting as white and yet have the experience of being people of color as well, to share their stories, and doing that within a spiritual container where we could do some ancestral work as well and be curious about each other and ask questions and feel our experience. So we started that about a year and a half ago, a little bit over a year and a half ago. And we did that every 2 weeks. And then I realized I needed to actually make some income, a little bit more income, and grow up some more and get into a more diverse environment. And so I went to Hartford and did a chaplaincy residency at St. Francis Hospital, and started that about a year ago. And did that until a month ago, and was deep in the pandemic. And that opened me up to really being in the thick of racial injustice and witnessing what that looks like. And not that I can feel someone else's whole experience, and yet feeling the context of being in a hospital and being in deep connection with all sorts of people who from really around the world who are faced with the injustice in the system, and learning how to hold a really clear space. Not that I was great at it the whole time. I learned a lot from them mostly, and had an amazing mentor and supervisor, Celian Altame, who's from Haiti and an amazing teacher there in that program. And also my cohort of students who were in the program together were just amazing teachers. So I'm still integrating that experience, and it woke me up to realizing that my gifts are best offered when I feel happy, when I feel alive, and that's through doing the embodiment work and expressive arts ministry, which I was not able to do as a result of the pandemic. So I had programs running for art therapy and embodiment, and that was just cut. So I started doing things online and realizing, wow, okay, I really need this, and couldn't balance it all. And so I left the residency early, and just as I left, the racial revolution happened. So it was like perfect timing for me to get back into this work and to continue developing it and going deeper. So part of that has been with a friend of mine, and I'll talk a little bit more about our work because I'll be bringing us into that practice. Her name is Chastity Rodriguez, and we were developing what we were calling at one point reimagining whiteness, and now I'm calling it re-embodying whiteness. She stepped aside, she's Afro-Latina, and realized, I just need to focus on myself and my community, and working with white folks right now really isn't going to be serving me. And so she blessed me with the capacity to bring our work out. And of course, I wouldn't do it in the same way that we would do it together. And yet I'm now developing it in my own way and doing it within a community called the Web of Love, which is online through a dear friend of mine, Katrina Korovos, who's been organizing it, and other amazing earth-centered healers in mostly the Northeast, but really all around. And so we do online classes, and you can find that out too on Facebook. And so I'm doing a White Allies group once a week on Tuesdays, and it's been an evolving process. And a lot of it for me right now is reading a lot and researching and doing other programs in embodied social justice that are just blossoming. There's a lot more coming out right now, which is really needed. And there's a lot of resources that I can point people to apart from what I'm doing. And I would say the main teacher and guide that I have who has been really inspiring me is Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands. And so that book talks about how intergenerational racialized trauma plays out in white bodies, in Black bodies, and in police bodies. And there's an online course that's a 5-part course that is free, that you can learn all of the kind of broad concepts that he's offering. And that's a great way to get started. And then also reading the book or listening to the book. There's a lot of amazing embodied practices in that resource. So I think that's a lot of what I've done and where I come from. And I'm sure I could share more, but I think we'll get into that more. Yeah, and I can either do the practice, or if there's questions or anything you want to ask me about, Robyn. Yeah.
That was really beautiful to hear and touching, and yeah. I think a practice now would be great, and then we'll leave some time for people to share and ask questions. That's how it feels to me. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I noticed, I just want to bring this part in, is a big part of my journey and what it is to do this work is around ancestral healing. And so I mentioned that a little bit, and I just want to put that as a kind of, let's look at that at some point. We may not get deep into that, and yet to be curious about, where we come from and where these stories, memories, ideas around race really do come from, as race is a construct, and it's not an embodied reality except for the stories that have been given to us and the traumas that we have around it. And that we can look at those and we can be present with them, and we can release them as well. So healing is possible, and I'm not healed, that's for sure. And it's a lifelong, and if you believe in it, lifelong journey as well. So in this moment, I want to bring us not too far back, although we will reflect on where our stories about race came from in this lifetime that we can remember. And I want to help us to get a little more grounded, a little more in our bodies after all that talk. It'll definitely help me. And then we can get to that practice, and we'll get to a place where we're cultivating a sense of compassion with all that we're holding. So I invite you to close your eyes and be present with your bones, especially your sits bones, and the pressure that you are feeling on the chair, the seat, as well as your feet and their connection to the floor. Feeling the structure of your body and the support that you have within your body. And being with your breath and breathing in, receiving the wholeness of your experience. And breathing out through the bones, releasing whatever you're ready to release in this moment to be more present. And continuing this breath of breathing in and out through the bones. Feeling that connection to your seat and to the floor. And then noticing your pelvis, this place where we hold so much and also holds us together. A place that is held by roots. These roots of our ligaments and the connective tissues. It's almost like a nest of roots. So I invite you with breath and with your awareness and with movement to explore your pelvis. Explore this nest of roots. This seat of your power. And allowing any sound as well. Being curious as much as possible. And only going in as far as you feel comfortable. Knowing you can always come back to your bones, back to stability, back to support whenever you need to. And then exploring how these roots can grow down from that nest, down into the earth, through the layers of the topsoil and the sediment layers, growing down, down, down into the earth, into the center of the earth as much as possible, into that magma that's churning a new earth from the center. And also bring awareness to those bones that also have marrow in the center. And this marrow is much like the magma in the center of the earth. So see if you can feel the connection of your marrow with this magma through your roots. And this marrow is where we access the stories of our ancestors. So I invite you to honor the healthy, healed, and whole ancestors from your lineage. And to notice if there's any images or names that come up. And we're really just focusing on the healthy, healed, and whole ancestors at this moment, and asking them to hold clear boundaries with any ancestors that are not yet healed, for us to hold some space with. And yet being with those ancestors that are connected to the ancestral lineage and have been connected. Whether you have any names or you have any images, that doesn't matter. Simply just being with whatever sensation you can be with, connecting the center of the earth with the center of your bones and this ancestry. And from this place of connection, I invite us to honor the indigenous peoples of wherever we are, the land where we find ourselves, and to thank them for the relationship they've built with the land. And my prayer is that their cultures may thrive and flourish, their people may thrive and flourish, and that we may be able to learn from them someday. So staying with this connection to your marrow and to the center of the earth. And I invite you to bring up that nourishment from the earth into your body. Breathe it in, filling yourself with support, with a new story from the center of the earth. This new earth story, and feeling what your story is from this new earth story as well, in connection with your healthy, healed, and whole ancestors. And there may be some images that come or ideas, or simply just a sensation. Welcome what's there as much as possible. And notice your spine as well. Your spine from those roots all the way up to your crown. And I invite you to open your crown if you feel you can, to receive the blessings from the infinite as well, from the cosmos, to come down and to meet these roots. So you are a bridge between the earth and the sky. We are that bridge right now. And from this place, I invite you to remember those stories or story from your youth, your childhood, going back as far as you can to when you were first aware that race existed as a construct. And allow whatever arises to come to the surface. Staying with your bodily sensation as much as possible. Noticing what happens, what changes, where there's tension, where there's freedom, where there's emotion, and how it changes with the breath. And keep breathing. And if you want to bring a hand to some part of your body that's feeling that sensation the strongest, I invite you to do that. Honoring what's arising. Honoring that this is your story. And also bringing an awareness of how this sensation, these feelings, are connected to many other people. Maybe there are other people from your story that you know of, and acknowledging that there are many people who have similar sensations and feelings and emotions who you don't know, who we don't know. And yet they have these same feelings. So seeing if you can be with those feelings and a larger awareness that you are connected to so many people through these very feelings, these very sensations. And bringing breath, bringing kindness to these places, nestling up next to them, being curious as much as possible and open. Bringing this sense of companionship, co-passion, right? Compassion, feeling with. And seeing if you can continue broadening your awareness to these other people who also share this feeling with you. Maybe some of them on this Zoom call and others throughout the world. We are not alone. So staying with that feeling and honoring your connection. And I invite you to stay with those roots, and if you're ready to send down anything into the earth that you don't need, just send it down with your breath. Maybe shake it off. But also know that some of it is going to stay and remain. And that you can open your eyes when you're ready and come back.
Thank you, Hilary. That was powerful for me. It's such a deep topic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm curious if anybody wants to share. Just put me in the chat. We have a good 10 minutes, so let's use it to our advantage. Just please unmute. And see you soon, Christina.
Oh, that was just so powerful. And I'm just so happy you're in Burlington. I just want to scoop you up. I'm just working on a really big piece about race right now, but I want to give other people time to share. But my first experience, my father was a civil rights activist, was when I was a child sitting in the back of the bus in Atlanta, when the buses were segregated. And this bus driver getting furious at us that my mother and I, who was very pregnant, were sitting in the back of the bus. And this fury that he had. And, I was only 3.5, and I still can summon his face and that fury. And I got at that moment, and a deep, like in my bones, that hasn't really ever left, that fury.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow. Thank you.
Which is still the fury that is out there. That's what we're up against. A lot of it is that fury.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Hilary.
Yeah, thank you, Sense, for sharing that. It's really powerful. Yeah, another word might be rage as well. Yeah.
Who else would like to share? Just put me in the chat. Mitchell.
So for me, actually, hearing your story about your travels and your childhood made me remember, which is a really big, great memory. I never really sort of saw color. Because growing up, although she was a woman that came to our home maybe twice a week Mhm. She was a black woman from Philadelphia that would take the train to my little town. But the joke was she had practically raised me because my mother would always sort of plop me in the in the in the just plop me, and she would watch me. But I grew up with this woman my whole life, and she was very mothering to me, and had this amazing relationship, even down to like in her later years. I remember her getting asphyxiated from cleaning our home and holding her and coddling her before the ambulance took her. But, I realized how I don't see color, and how I don't understand how people do see these differences. And I feel blessed that I had this person in my life. And as I was meditating, closed my eyes, she came. Her name was Amanda, and she just came forth to me. And what a beautiful woman! To your point of, she had a daughter, and met her a few times. And I always wonder now, like, where is she? What is she doing? Much like the nanny that took care of you, it sparked that interest. So just your talk was beautiful, and it just brought back such beautiful memories. And so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mitchell. And I also want to speak to what you shared about not seeing color, and that that could be actually, just to let you know, really harmful to people of color to hear that at this time. And I don't want to say that your experience isn't true for you. What I want to share is that it's really important to see color right now, and to acknowledge the experience of people of color, especially Black people right now.
I guess maybe to help clarify some, I recognize, literally, like, see color and recognize differences in people. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I recognize that we all have the same blood, we all have blood. Even brings me back to like sort of work I've done in film before. For many years, I worked with a director where we were doing like an anti-smoking commercial. We were trying to get young children that were smoking. And we sat there and we went through all these casting tapes. A really famous director. He did it. American History X was a movie he directed. But at one point, everybody turned and said, well, we still need to find, a Chinese person, an Asian, all these. And the director looked at him and said, like, children don't see the things you're looking for. I don't know, I just think it's interesting how we point out all these things. And it was just more like, in general, people, it's a generalization to say kids don't see color, kids don't see nationalities, they see people. Much like even when I was a kid, I remember a friend would wash their hands before dinner and couldn't understand why their friend's hands were still dark in color, and whatever.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I just want to bring that forward because it's really important right now. And so I would reflect on that for you, and to consider how you can help others, Black folks especially, just simply by holding space for them and their experience as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Hilary, and thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I do want to acknowledge that this is like one step in the work, right? This is the inner work, so that we can get aligned with ourselves and our stories, our past, our ancestry, and then take action in the world. And a big part of that action for me is learning from people of color, especially Black folks right now, and hearing, what would they want right now? Like, what support are they needing? And yet to do that in a way that is really from an open heart and a grounded place, and not from a place of like, oh, I want to make a difference, I want to help out because I need to feel better about myself. And so it's subtle, and it requires deep work, and also finding that alignment for what do I feel called to do. Not everything that someone might say is helpful is something that's right for me to do necessarily. So that's a deep question for all of us.
It's a really good point. And it starts with the inner work, doesn't it? I mean, that's where we need to start.
Yeah.
Like you said, yeah. Anybody else want to put me in the chat and speak? So for me, while you're thinking about whether you want to share or not, I just want to encourage you. It's brave to speak up, and this is a safe place to do that, as you already heard. So if you do want to say something, just put me in the chat. Yeah, for me, I just say like the complexity of the inner exploration expands the range from my ancestors in Russia, the Jews in Russia and the pogroms and what happened then, to my experience in high school when in the meditation, what came to me. I can barely talk about this without crying. I brought friends home from high school one day, and I remember we were walking down the street and they were so uncomfortable, and I was like, why are they so uncomfortable? They were walking behind me or something. I was just like, let's go hang out at my house. So we were hanging out at my house in my living room, and my father, who never came home ever before 6 p.m., showed up at 3 or 3:30. And he saw me sitting in the living room with 3 of my friends from school, 3 black men. And we were just chatting it up and having a good time. And I don't know what expression was on his face when he walked in, but they immediately got up and left. And I was so confused and so shocked and so ashamed, and I don't even know. It was such an incredibly bizarre, so confusing. So that's in my bones. And I'm also raising a daughter of color and learning about identity and how, you brought this up earlier. It's identity is an inner experience. I've met Koreans who feel white, identify as Caucasian, and Koreans who feel Asian, and Koreans who feel Black because of their family. I learned so much listening to that community, her community, about that I found really important. And I'm watching her to see how she identifies, and learning from her about that. So yeah, wow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
To share those pieces.
Yeah, that's so deep when it's family, and learning how to help family as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's hear a few sentences from Since again as we come to the close here. But yeah, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to say, because I feel this is important to say to the whole group, about, and I couldn't think of an ancestor that really is healthy. My family, I am one of the first, I'm from Jamestown. So it's my family's been here for 400 years and we're all slave owners. And in some ways it feels like I'm the one who's here to heal that ancestral line. That's why I ended up with a stepfather who was a civil rights activist. And I'm really the one who's here to heal that. I feel like that's what I came to the planet to do. For the healing for my ancestors.
Wow, thanks for sharing, Since. Yeah.
Thanks so much for the work you're doing, Hilary. And I really appreciate the resources, the ones that I put in the chat. I hope that everybody will take a look at those, and also to connect with you. I know that I'm going to send it out, but what's the fastest, quickest way to join it, to do this work with ourselves, Hilary?
Well, I would say, you can find out more about the weekly group on my website, movingin grace.com. If you go to the racial reconciliation, it says reconciliation tab, and there's more info there. Also, you can simply message me on Facebook or email me at hilaryjlake.com, and I can send you a link to the group. There's another happening tonight at 8 o'clock till 9:30, and we do practices like this. We'll do a very similar practice actually tonight. And then we get more time, everyone gets to share. There's council practice as well. And then we go and break out into small groups and share more. Yeah. Yeah. And then Grace Between Races is a forum online, and you can learn from other people's posts there. You can post your own things there. There is an intention for dialogue across racial differences, and we're all learning about how to do that. So it requires a lot of like self-responsibility and accountability and curiosity as well. And we encourage feedback as well, and give feedback from the heart as much as possible. And it's all about growth. Yeah, sharing our truth.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll be sending the recording and also the links that you sent me to everybody else so that they can connect with you. And
I just want to acknowledge, like, the group tonight is for white allies. So I see there are people of color in the group, and thank you for joining. I really appreciate your presence here so much. And also I find it's important, you know, we can do some of this work as white allies together to make sure we get the space to just like let it all out as well, and not have to be careful as much, and yet also spaces where we can both come together and learn from each other too. So I really appreciate your willingness as folks of color, Black folks, to be present to this. And I also want to acknowledge that the work of just being is really big, just being here. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to ask us all to have a nice deep breath. Yeah, I think it's important to breathe and kind of let everything integrate, you know, the parts that were challenging, the parts that were might have ruffled some feathers, like Mitchell spoke to, which I appreciate hearing your voice. Thank you. And I'm just sending love to everybody. You know, this is our humanness. As you said, Hilary, we're not healed. We're all making mistakes, and we're all doing the best we can, and that's the most important thing. And the conscious intention to look, to really look and have the courage to look is really the most important piece.
Yeah, and we learn by making mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I sure
that's
do.
what I learned. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Hilary, so much for being here. What a blessing.
Thank
Such
you.
a blessing to have you.
Thank
you
you
so
all
much
for coming. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Next Tuesday. I'll actually be on the Cape, so maybe I'll see where. I'm not going to be on a boat like Hilary is, but I'll be somewhere fun. So I look forward to seeing you then next Tuesday, and feel free to reach out to Hilary, to me, and just keep practicing love. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Mwah.